Hey guys, Edre here, and today I'm going to be doing a new album review of the new Fleet Foxes album, Sure. Now, a bit of background like I do with all my reviews. I think Fleet Foxes is a pretty solid, indie band for the most part. I've not been the craziest about all of their material, but going pretty far back, I believe to 2008 with their self-titled album, there's some pretty good tracks on there. Overall, I think it was a pretty solid album. In all honesty, I'm not sure if they've put out stuff at that level since then, in my personal opinion. So going in the Sure, I didn't have the highest of all high expectations, but from a lot of the hype I've heard surrounding this album, I decided, I'll give this a justified chance and let's see how I feel. For the most part, Fleet Foxes continues to go down their indie path. They continue to go down this style. They continue to make a name for themselves with this sound. And when you compare this album to a lot of their other albums, the sound is pretty consistent. There is a bit difference between this album and past albums. I think this album does go a bit more abstract with some of the composition and instrumentation, and the flow of the tracks is actually pretty nice. However, there is some problems I have with it overall as an overall project, but I'm going to get to that a little later. I'm going to dive into a few tracks that I thought were standout, as well as some that I felt were a bit not standout, to say the least. Wadding or waiting, to be honest, I'm kind of stupid, so I don't necessarily know if it's waiting or wadding. It's probably wadding. Wadding in Waist High Water, what is the opening track here? It sets the mood. I mean, I will start with that. I usually like at least covering the first track, even if I'm not crazy about it, because I feel like the first track to an album is very important. And this song has an odd melody, an odd vocal melody to it, but it has a very nice atmosphere. So right away, I was very kind of drawn in by that atmosphere. I was like, okay, there's some stuff going on here. It's actually kind of good. So, yeah. That was the first thing that really grabbed my attention, was the atmosphere. And then the next thing that grabbed my attention was its transition into the track Sunblind, which has a really good feel to it. As a track, I think it is decent. I don't think it is the greatest thing I've ever heard, but I like the feel. I like the atmosphere. And this is a trend that I see throughout this entire album. There's a very ethereal, very airy and atmospheric, very big sounding, very reverberated indie sound on this album. It's like indie, but with a lot of big production and reverb and all that. And I gotta say, going into it, I was a little hesitant, because sometimes the genre does not always mesh together the best. I will give them this, though. On the production, on the vibe, on the overall sound, I did like what Fleet Foxes are going with on this album. However, despite the nice transitions, it's a very familiar sound. It may have a even more atmospheric production than before, than the stuff that they've put out in the past. That doesn't necessarily mean it is 100% unique. At the end of the day, a lot of these songs do feel like they could have been placed on any other album of theirs. Maybe if it was just produced a little differently and tweaked a bit. A lot of these songs are very familiar. A song like Can I Believe You has another problem. It's not necessarily the most familiar sounding song. I could tell that there was a bit more ambition on a song like Can I Believe You, but even though it has a good vibe, overall good feel, and overall good instrumentation as well, something about it is forgettable. And I will say, I think an underlying issue with not only this song but a lot of this album is that, and I talk about this a lot on some albums, the production is really good. The instrumentation is pretty good. All the little details are pretty good. But the actual core of the song is not as great. When you strip back the production, when you strip back all the fanciness added to the tracks, and you just look at the skeleton of the songs, a song like Can I Believe You, to me, is not that great of a song. I get the same thing with a song such as For a Week or Two. That is another track to me that, great, once again, good sound, good atmosphere. They probably got what they were going for. But the core skeleton, the core of the song to me, same with Themia, just was not that are just probably not that great, and that might be what drags these songs down, because on the surface, they sound fine. But when I actually boil it down, a lot of the flaws start to show. That being said, there is some upside, there is some good songs on here, don't get me wrong. Jara is a good track, good acoustic guitars, good drumming for sure. I love the drumming on that track. Long Way Past the Past, definitely sees them go down a more poppy path, but needless to say, it was well executed in my opinion. And for the most part, I wasn't left that dissatisfied with many of the tracks on this album, because even the ones I thought had a poor bass, a poor skeleton, they were built upon well enough that they do make up for that to an extent, but not enough that they're great songs, but enough that they aren't bad songs. So I wasn't left totally disappointed here. At the end of the day, Fleet Foxes definitely continues down their stylistic path. There's nothing majorly different about this album compared to, say, their self-titled album. But at the end of the... I keep on thinking at the end of the day, but I will say that even though it sounds similar, some of the songs themselves just don't do it for me. So unfortunately, that does drag this album down a bit. However, I'm not like mad at Fleet Foxes or think that this is a horrendous album that people should avoid. Check it out. I think it's far from being bad. It's just the actual bass of this album is a lot weaker than I think they made it out to be. But I have settled on giving this album a solid 6 out of 10. Now, anybody that doesn't know my reviews knows or doesn't know. Anything above a 5 is good. Anything below a 5 is bad. So, a 6 out of 10 is actually a positive review. Now, a lot of people don't see it that way, and I'm sure I'm going to get some people on here that are going to disagree with that. Because a lot of people see 6 and think, oh, that's a moderate negative review. Nope, not on my scale. A 6 out of 10 is a positive score. That is it for now. Fleet Foxes, sure, 6 out of 10.